What's up, Pittsburgh family? And also big shout out to State College. And big thank you to James and Elena for really trusting me with the pulpit. It's a big deal when a preacher gives up his pulpit, especially to a new friend, because he doesn't have a clue what I'm going to say this morning. But James, for real, thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for trusting me. So sorry that I couldn't come up there this weekend. Just had some few health challenges, and it turns out that maybe it was God's timing. James, praying for you, bro. Heard you're a little under the weather as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to postpone, and here in about a month, I'm going to get to bring my lovely wife Terry. She would not have been able to come this weekend because we just had our third grandchild. This is Jacob, and everything went great. And it's a how that is if you experienced it. So anyway, God's timing is perfect, and but I'm just so grateful to be able to spend this time with you right now, and just share about my life, and also to prepare us for this 40 days of prayer journey that we're getting ready to go on together. You guys are probably the 26th church, maybe something like that. And all I did was just I wrote a book not to try to teach people about prayer. I'm not that guy. But I wrote about a process and a journey, and really something I developed to try to rebuild a relationship with God that was in ruins a number of years ago. And I'm going to be very vulnerable. One of the words that's going around about this series is uncensored. Now, I did not choose that word. Somebody else started saying it. But I am, I'm very open about my life. I'm going to share about some struggles that have to do with addiction and mental health, and really just my run from God. And then I'm going to talk about my return to God. And so I want to jump right in this morning. This morning we'll set up what we're going to launch on Wednesday, this 40 days of prayer. Hopefully you have your book by now. What I'd encourage you to do is go ahead and get familiar with the introduction and really just the process. Go ahead and start coming up with what I call impossible prayers. And these are going to be things that you have struggled. These are strongholds in your life that you're trying to break through. This is a spiritual breakthrough project. And we're going to get to know each other really well. We're going to spend about, 6, I guess, Wednesday nights together, 6 or 7. And I can't wait to get to know you guys, because every time we do with this, whether it's a big church like, say, Houston, or whether it's a smaller congregation like you guys, and everything in between, we're going to develop a real bond together. We're going to laugh together. We're going to cry together. We're going to dream together. Laughter, goosebumps, and tears is what I always promise. And I think I'm going to be able to, I don't know, maybe offer some perspective that you haven't had. I'm going to preach not from, let me make this commitment to you. I won't preach about anything I've not experienced. And that's a different, for me. All the years, I was 15 years in the ministry working for the church, and led, pretty large groups, was in charge of thousands by the time I was ready to make my break. And anyway, I feel like I preached about a lot of things I didn't know about then. And it wasn't, it was a good heart. And I was preaching from the Bible, and shoot, everybody, we need that. We need teachers and pastors and elders, and to really equip us. But my preaching now has changed. I preach from experience, and there's so many things about the Bible that have come to life that I never really understood. I thought I did, but I hadn't lived through them yet. And it was August 19th, 1989, when I made my good confession. And I was baptized in the Chattahoochee River, a river that runs right through my city, 1 o'clock in the morning, because I couldn't wait till the next day. And I made that good confession in that cold water, and went under, and my new life began. I was 25 years old. I was trying to get sober about the time that I found the church, and the brother reached out to me. And it would begin this journey that now is 34 years in. And I didn't know what I didn't know, just like, when we start this thing, is what we think life is going to be like. And then the one that shows up a lot of times is very different. The storms of life come, and they don't ask permission, and they don't make an appointment. They just show up. And storms came calling in my life. All of us are going to have them, whether it be the birth of a child, someone passing, aging parents, a divorce, a remarriage. It can be a new job, a relocation, an illness. It could be a bankruptcy. It could be mental health struggles. It could be addiction. It could be a terrible accident. There's so many things that come in this journey, that maybe we get 80 years. We don't know, but it's a mist, and all the things that come and go. This journey has had so many different dips and valleys and mountaintop experience as well. But I'm probably going to share more about kind of the challenges that I've had and the way that God has helped me overcome them. And that's made all the difference. This morning I'm going to come out of two passages. The first one's Old Testament and the second one is New Testament. And just listen as I read. And I want you to hear this like you're hearing it for the very first time. It comes out of Psalm 139. And like I said, this meant one thing to me before the storms, and now it means something totally different. It says, "You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I'm still with you." I've always loved this passage, and sometimes it's a little scary because, it says that he knows me, man. He knows me inside and out. He knows every thought before I have it. He knows every word that comes across my tongue. He knows what I do. He knows when I get up, when I lie down, where I go, what I think, how I feel. He knows all of it. And, he goes into says, I went to the depths and you were there. And then I went to the highest mountaintops and you were there. I went to the sea and you were there. And it just talks about just a journey where God was always present. And one thing, as much as I've struggled and fallen, and I've failed and failed and failed and failed, one thing I never ever doubted was that he was with me. But there were many times that I didn't feel that. I was the least likely guy to become a preacher. And nobody saw that coming. I was not that guy. We didn't go to church, and I didn't study the Bible. I wasn't the youth group, or I was the other guy. And it wasn't that my parents didn't raise me right. They did. I just didn't choose right very much. I mean, I was just a rule breaker, and I was just a lying, cheating thief, and it was crazy. And drugs and alcohol were a big part of my story. My father, his father, and it didn't miss me, is alcoholism, and it is a genetic thing. You can get there other ways, but there's definitely a genetic link. And I lost my dad when I was in college. He passed. This disease took him, and it overcame him. He decided he didn't want to be here anymore, and that kind of felt like my destiny, my legacy, and I was working on it. There were several, significant things that happened along the way. I'd grown up in an alcoholic household. Some of you guys, 1 out of 10 of us in the audience I'm talking to, 1 out of 10 of us have this genetic difference, and I call it just one more. Just give me one more. 6 is good, 12 is better. And that was just the way I'm put together. I'm passionate and emotional, but I want things hard. And I mean, I want them in a hard way, right? And that's just the way I live my life. Luckily, I was a good athlete, and school came easy to me. Social came easy to me. Had all the right friends, hang in the right groups, and I excelled. Went and played a little bit in college. God gave me so much, and my story was much like the prodigal son, is that he blessed me with so much, and my life is a story of just squandering the gifts that God gave me and still being so gracious with me. When I was right around adolescence, someone hurt me. I mean, I was, there was some abuse, and it wasn't family. It was a trusted coach. I was young, and that really scarred me for life. So now, you had this insecure kind of wanting to prove myself, popular, but very scared kid that now had a secret, and that produced all kind of interesting things. As you grow older, chasing girls and doing all the things because you had all this pressure inside. And then when Dad passed, that was just, I went dark for a minute, and I just went on a reckless ride. I was, at this point in my life, I was crashing cars and getting in fights, and, got arrested several times. And, it was what it was. And then all of a sudden I just crashed right into the grace of God. And I mean, when I fell hard. I fall in love easy. And I only have one speed, is all out. I'm either going to try to save the world or tear some stuff up. That's just the way he made me. And, I was so ready because I was looking for a place to belong. I was looking for forgiveness. I was looking for a second chance and a brand new start. I was looking for a family, man. I was looking to be validated and accepted and loved and all the things that I didn't feel. Now, me and my mom, ride or die, we're tight. I mean, to this day, it doesn't go 2 days, 3 days without us talking. I mean, I'm a mama's boy. But my dad and my relationship was it was very complicated. Let's say that. And I've been trying to untangle that thing for years and years and years. He's been gone since 1988, and I'm still working on that thing. I share all this to say, I can relate to you one way or another. God has given me a life of my choices. Now, He doesn't cause us to do anything, but He takes our choices and He uses them, and He honors our decision. He uses them, and He'll either use us to be a good example or a bad example of what not to be. But He's always using whatever we give Him, and I gave Him a lot. Some of those listening, you've been through some abuse in your life. I feel you. Some of you have been divorced and remarried. Me too. Some of you deal with addiction issues. It's hard to see. It doesn't have to be alcohol and, cocaine. It can be prescription drugs, Xanax and Adderall, or painkillers. I've done it all. Some of you guys have gotten in trouble and maybe been through arrests and embarrassing, humiliating things. Some of you've had, I could go on and on and on. I'm just saying, God will use whatever we give Him, and the storms come. And if we really, really understand who He is, I got as high as I could get, and He was my ceiling. And I've been to the depths of despair, and He was my floor. And I ran as fast as I could to get away from Him, and He was faster. I backslid and went back as I could, and He was right behind me. He was over me and through me and in me, and I fell in love with who I call the divine stalker. He just wouldn't let me go. And I want to throw that out there to anybody that is more. I always felt like He was with me, but I was in trouble. There's a lot of people that feel like, on a good day, He's with me, but on a bad day, He's not. And when we really, we've used that word fall away. Oh, they fell away. I want to just throw this out there to be careful when you're using those kind of words, because people said the same thing about me. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. God was not done with me yet. And this scripture, it shows me that he doesn't just, when we have a bad day, He's on us. Man, when we're going through a tough time, He is carrying me. And when I make stupid decisions, He's there to protect me. And, I got to a point where I was just sick and tired, and I was so ready. But there was this nature that He gave me that I struggled with and I wrestled with. I didn't understand this scripture. I didn't understand when it says that, that I was created in the secret place and that all the days of my life were ordained before one of them came to be, that I was woven together in my mother's womb and I was made perfect exactly the way that he wanted me to be. I mean, I didn't see that. I felt like I was damaged goods. I felt like, that I'm just destined for, try to try to stay alive and just, be whatever kind of life I could live. But I certainly didn't believe that it was possible for me to live the life that he's given me now. So in, 9 months after I was baptized, now we're talking about pagan. I mean, I even been sober a year at the time. Um, I got put in full-time ministry. Now, these decisions I'm going to talk about, they were mine. Nobody put a gun to my head and said, hey, you need to go in the ministry. I wanted it. I was ambitious. And it didn't take me long to figure out, man, that's what I want to do. I want to preach. And the first day that I stood on that stage, I connected with this beautiful audience and I felt something I had never felt before. I mean, something came upon me and I was like, my gosh, this is what I've been looking for. And I started this crazy ride, man. And it was, this crazy pagan guy that was married shortly after going into ministry, had a couple of beautiful kids. And I don't know, it was just kind of like this roller coaster ride. Remember how you going up the tick, 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 tick before it goes, whoa. That was me. And I wanted the next promotion. First it was campus, and then it was singles, and then it was marrieds, and then it was a sector, and then it was a region, then it was a super region, then it was a co-leading the Atlanta church, which is big. And I was kind of the right-hand man. And then Ben Barnett, who you guys know, Jonathan Lucas, maybe you know him too. We were kind of helping with a couple of elders, Don Burrows and Sonny Sessions, helping Steve Sapp lead the Southeast, and it was heavy. So by the time I was about 35, I was in charge of a few thousand people. And I want to let you know, man, that gets heavy, especially for, a young man that still didn't know who he was. Man, it turns out that, I should have taken a minute and tried to figure out, man, who are you and what is it you're doing? But I didn't. I just got into this whirlwind ride, and you laughed at all my jokes, and you stood and cheered when I got done preaching, and you stood in line to come and shake my hand and tell me how well I'd done, even when I hadn't. And, I wasn't in touch with all this stuff, man. It wasn't that I wasn't sincere. I was. It didn't mean I didn't mean what I was preaching. I did. Passion, and I could grow a church, man. You give me a church, I'll grow it. You give me a church to turn around, I will turn it around. You want to give me a church to lead, I will lead it. And that's just really, that was my calling. I found what I'd always wanted to do. But, the more pressure that came on me and the more responsibility I had, the more inside I started kind of feeling like a poser. I don't know if anybody, they call it the imposter syndrome. And, y'all told me how awesome I was, and I accepted it. But inside I was like, if you only knew who I was. And I had all this fear, man. And so I compensated by trying to prove myself, to, like I said, be validated and accepted. And you guys gave me that, and God bless you for that. I look back on it and I say, man, I shouldn't have. It's the praise of men tests your heart. And that's what happened. And I was found wanting. And so around, 2002, things started to rumble right before the shock wave that was going to go through the ICOC. And, I'd gone through physical things. I've had a lot of surgeries. I deal with chronic pain. And after yet another surgery, I was laid up. That's when the church fell apart. In Atlanta, it blew up. I'll tell you that story later if you ever want to know. But this is when I found my first bout of serious depression. I turned 40 and everything just changed. I didn't know what depression felt like. I had counseled people that were depressed, and I tried to tell them the right things and tried to help them. But I had compassion and sympathy, but I didn't have empathy because I'd never been through it. That's the difference in compassion and empathy. Compassion is, man, I feel you. Empathy is, I know you. I am you. Walk with me. I've been through. And man, it knocked me down. And I was like, don't leave the house. That kind of, that ain't me. I'm the life of the party, man. I'm on the move. I don't like to lay down. And all of a sudden I was just knocked to the floor, and I didn't understand what was going on. And then that was followed by this, this manic episode where that's a whole nother trip. Now I know somebody out there is understanding what I'm about to talk about, because maybe you have dealt with some of these things. I just want to share my story because maybe it'll help somebody. Maybe I can encourage somebody, give somebody a reason to keep on going, because when I went down, man, it was hard. And please, those that struggle with this, what we don't want to hear is, just pray more. Just study your Bible, bro. Don't feel like that, man. Be grateful. And well-meaning people will tell us, all the things that we ought to know, but it doesn't help. What we need to do is sit with somebody. Just sit with them. Be there for them. Don't try to fix us. And then the other way around, man, when I was out there, I tore some stuff up. And I ended up tearing up a marriage, and just wrecking a family by some crazy decisions. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And shortly after that, a dear friend of mine, Mike Shapiro, who's helped a lot of people in our fellowship, he's a neuropsychologist, and he was a good friend of mine. This was 20 years ago. I was finally diagnosed bipolar. And I've recently just kind of came out about that because I knew I was going to at some point. But that's a label that you can't shed. I mean, now that I've said that, bipolar, you're not ever going to forget it. If you hear about me or see me, that's going to be like, boop, I remember that dude. He's a recovering alcoholic and bipolar. And, it just is what it is. But it gave me some answers. But then it was like, oh, great, man. I mean, like, this is my life. I mean, I got to deal with this addiction thing, and now I got to deal with this thing. And I felt like it was a sentence, and it was a curse. And I look back, at this Psalm 139, and I'm like, this don't make any sense. It says you knit me together. You know what I'm saying? You saw every day ahead of me that I was fearfully and wonderfully made. I don't feel wonderful. I feel like this is a curse. This is a sentence. I got to live the rest of my life, dealing with, with this addictive nature and with this bipolar brain. And you called me to do this. And, I lost my heart and I gave up. It was too much. So in 2003, I walked away. I just decided I've had enough. I can't handle this anymore. I mean, I was at the lowest point of my life. And I hope nobody listening to this is there. But if you are, I need you to keep listening, man, because God was not done with me. Storms reveal the quality of our faith. And then God uses those things to mold us and shape us and refine us. I don't believe he punishes us. I don't think that he bans us and sends us off. I think that he uses those things, the storms and the choices I make and the different things in this thing called life, and he continues to make me into the man he wants me to be. But that is not easy. Sometimes he pushes me to the front of the class, and it's time to learn things that I could not learn in seminary. There's certain things. I went and got a master's in theology. That doesn't mean nothing. I mean, I did it so that I could have that credibility to be called a teacher. But the truth is, my relationship with God is what it's all about, not what I know, and not how well I can preach, and if I can make you laugh, and I can give you goosebumps, man, if I can break you, and if I can make you soar. Okay, that's talent, that's gifting. It doesn't mean that the relationship was solid. And so when I walked away, separated, and then divorced, and a lot of people knew me at that time, man, it was a public fall from grace. It was my greatest fear that came to visit me. And, I'd lost my family. I'd lost my job. I'd lost my good standing. I had the respect and adoration of congregations, and that was gone. And I became a cautionary tale. And I ain't mad at anybody. It was a good story. Trust me. You heard about kid? And I was out there, and I remember I was standing on my 800 square foot apartment balcony, looking up at the stars, and my life shattered around me. And I shook my fist at God, and I said, is this how it works? I give you 15 of the best years of my life, 25 to 40, and this is what I get? Well, I tell you what, I don't want nothing to do with you anymore. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to hear from you. I don't want to see your people. I ain't going to read your book, and I'm not even going to promise to do good. Be what I'm not going to be good. And this is a real prayer, fam. I'm not kidding. I said, do what you want with me, but I'm out. And I ran. and it was a reckless ride. I mean, for a dark year, I ran from God. And that's when I got high to try to get away from him. Couldn't do it. And I went, dark and deep and just, oh man, a dangerous place. And he was there. Everywhere I went, I could not get away from him. I was hanging out in clubs. I was hanging out in places I shouldn't have been. I was just like, he was there. I mean, God was stalking me, and he was showing me that you can run, you can hide, you can throw a tantrum, you can have a fit. I'm not going to let you go. So those that are struggling, even those who have left, God is all over them. He's chasing us. He's working around us. He's sending people to us. And I fell in love with a God I didn't know. Now, I don't have time this morning to tell you about my relationship with the Holy Spirit, but a lot of the things we're going to be doing over the next 6 weeks or so, I'm going to talk about my relationship with him. And I didn't know the Holy Spirit all those years. It doesn't mean that he wasn't real. He was. He was inside of me. It's just that I didn't know who he was. All the promises about him being the advocate and the counselor and the teacher, and he's going to warn me and remind me and guide me, protect me, talk to me, give me the words to say. I never experienced all that. I could just preach a great sermon about who he was, and I could dismantle your maybe wrong convictions. Maybe I thought that you didn't understand how you get him, how you keep him outdwelling, indwelling, laying on of hands, all that, confusing stuff. All I know was I was out there on my own, and I needed him for the first time in my life. I needed him. I didn't need a system. I didn't need to grow a church. I just needed to develop a relationship with God, in a deeper way than I ever had before. So he let me run and he let me tantrum. And now with the, you can see it however you want to, but I thought I was the prodigal son the first go around. At 25, pagan came to God, and as prodigal son comes home, kill the fattened calf. Now I look back and say, no. That was at 40 when I took everything that God had given me. I squandered it in wild wealth and reckless living. And now I see the father not sitting on the ranch in the parable of the prodigal son when the son goes off to the distant land. I see the father going to the distant land and watching, always there, always making sure he was protected. He never knew the father was present. He followed him, he protected him, he guided him, he kept him from certain situations. And then when the boy was ready to come home, he was there to greet him. That's just, one preacher's conviction. I want to go ahead and give you a disclaimer. The things I'm going to share today and over the next, whatever, these are my convictions, my opinions, what I believe to be true. It doesn't mean it's thus saith the Lord. I'm not going to tell you what to believe. You got to figure that out. I'm just sharing my journey about a God that, a God of grace that I really did not understand. And so that takes us to, so anyway, I'll share more and more about that, for the next, I'm gonna kind of weave a lot of things into this crazy story. There's so much more. This is kind of like 30,000 foot real fast version. But here's the point. I came back, and it wasn't like, I came back to church, and kind of showed back up and went through the restoration studies. No, I finally just surrendered in my heart, and I went back under those same stars and ready to talk. And remember, I had said, I ain't gonna talk to you. I felt like you looked down and said, how'd that work out for you? And I was beaten into a state of reasonableness. And I came back and I said, I'm ready to talk. And I said this, and I don't even know what possessed me to say it. It had to be this Holy Spirit. He says that he'll give us the words to say. We don't know. I mean, I didn't know. What do you say after the way that I had acted and all the people I had hurt and golly, where I'd taken the Holy Spirit into and all the things I'd done. And so I said this. I said, if you ever let me preach the word again, because I felt like I was disqualified, and a whole lot of leaders around this fellowship thought I was too. And that was hard because I'm like, man, I still got something to do. I said, if you ever let me preach the word again, I'll go to those that are harassed and helpless, the ones nobody else wants to go to, the hungry, the thirsty, the naked, the stranger, the sick, and the prisoner, the least of these. Now, I had preached about the least of these, sheep and the goats, Matthew 25, but again, hadn't really experienced it. You know what I'm saying? There's a big difference in preaching from experience and preaching from head knowledge, or, kind of pulling up a sermon from back in the day or stealing somebody else's sermon and putting your own little spin on it. I've done all that stuff. Or even great epiphanies you have in your times with God and your Bible study. It's awesome. But as far as from experience to be able to say, this is what I did, And I started getting in touch with Paul, and in a way that, I mean, he has become, besides Jesus, the ministry of Paul is what I've fashioned and designed the ministry God's given me now around. I mean, Paul was misunderstood. Every time he was called back to Jerusalem, he was in trouble. He was doing things that hadn't been done before. He was, talking and living by and teaching about the Spirit in a way that was nobody really had gotten to at that time. And, there was, I'll go, again, for time's sake, we'll hold off on that. But God answered my prayer. It took 3 years. There's some things we'll pray about and we think he hadn't answered us. And it's like, man, where are you? I've prayed this. You got to help me. And we can't see how he's working. But I believe now, man, he is always at his work, like Jesus said. He is always, always, always working, whether we're in touch with it or not. And I needed to see it. And so, I prayed, just let me do it. And 3 years later, he brings a kid into my life, a kingdom kid who had become a gang leader and was on trial for his life with a gang-related murder. And he threw me right in the deep end of the pool and said, "You're gonna help the harassed and helpless. I'm calling you to go visit some people in prison." And that one act of trying to help my little brother stay alive, it was a potential death penalty case. It changed my life, and it led to going in over 100 prisons and jails across the country, on 4 continents, around the world. Some of the most famous prisons in America that you would know of, prisons in Honduras and Mexican prisons. Woo, I love those. I mean, I've done some work in some Mexican prisons, South African prisons, Ukrainian prisons. It's like, Netflix top 10 toughest prisons in the world. I've been in half of them. It became my grand obsession and my glorious burden to go to the least of these, and they changed my life. We're going to spend one whole Wednesday night on the least of these. But as I begin to wrap, and I'm not saying right away, but as I head on down to my return, I'm going to come out of 2 Corinthians 12, and this has become one of the scriptures that changed my life. So think about it. Psalm 139. Man, I tried to run from him. I tried to get away. He stalked me, and then he reminded me, look, I made you the way I made you, perfect, fearfully, wonderfully, knit you together, all your days planned, predestined. I got you, and you got to trust me the way I made you. I made you with that addictive nature. If I take that away, if I answered your prayer to take away that addiction, it would take away you. And I gave you the brain the way I made it. Bipolar is a label. I don't care about labels. He's given me a fascinating brain that I need to learn how to manage. It likes to run and it likes to crash and it's interesting. Never boring. But he says, I've given you the brain. If I took away that fascinating brain, I would take away you. So no, I'm not going to answer those prayers. You've got to learn to embrace the way that I made you. And that has made all the difference. So in 2 Corinthians 12, check this. It says, therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I'm strong. Paul, brilliant, educated, conceited, all right? For Paul, it was all about Paul. I could relate to that because, man, you guys treated evangelists like we were rock stars and put us on a pedestal, and that's how Paul was. And Paul, he was zealous and he was passionate. He was obsessed with this mission. And that was me, is me. That's the way he put me together. So I started relating to Paul. But then he breaks it down. He says, to keep me from becoming conceited, because he knows how he made me. He made Paul the way he wanted to make him, but he knew there was some pitfalls to that. And so he says, to keep me from becoming conceited, he gave me a thorn in my flesh. He says, a messenger of the enemy. You know, God will even use him. We give the devil so much more power than he has. He's not omnipresent. He's not everywhere all the time. He's not omniscient. He doesn't know all things. He's not omnipotent. He doesn't have all power. And he can't be in any place but one. He doesn't have the power. He can't read your mind. I mean, he's limited, and God can even use him. So he said, hey, I'm going to send you a little gift, and it's going to be this thorn. Now, don't take him lightly. I mean, this is a spiritual battle, light and darkness, but I'm telling you, either God's got you or he doesn't. And a lot of times we give the enemy so much more power than is due him. God's got all of it, all of it. And that spirit inside of me, oh my gosh, it's so powerful. And so he gave him a little gift, and it was a thorn. Now, we don't know what Paul's thorn was. I mean, people have different opinions on it. We don't know. All we know, it was something he did not want. 3 times, probably a lot more than that, he pleaded, take it away, take it away, take it away, take it away. And God said, no, grace is enough. That's all. If you only had that, grace is enough. And I guarantee you, I pleaded with this thing. Why I got to be an alcoholic? How come I can't have a glass of wine with my wife? How come I can't have a few beers with the boys watching a ball game like everybody else does? Man, filled with self-pity and saying, man, why'd you make me this way? See, I was resisting my nature and questioning the way he made me. You've got something like that. It could be physically, it could be mental, it could be some sort of habit, it could be some sort of situation you're in a relationship, it could be physical. There's so many things that it could be that if we're honest, it's like, man, I don't like the way he made me. He messed me up. Why I gotta be like this? And a lot of times the ones that look like they got it all and look like they're shoot, some of us are the worst. Because we're in that poser syndrome, man. Everybody tells us how awesome we are, and we know better. Ain't none of us got it. Ain't none of us clean. And so, you know, he did the same thing with me. No, and no. I'm not going to take it away. You got to learn to deal with it. It's time for you to embrace who you really are. And so somewhere along the line, Paul made peace with his thorn, whatever this was. He not only made peace with it, he embraced it. And he had an epiphany that changed his life. And I want you to get this. He said, oh, so my problem is conceit. It's all about me. The thorn is a gift to give me some humility. And when this is the crescendo, you know, the exclamation point. When I am weak, oh man, that's when you're strongest, is when I'm the weakest. He said, therefore, I'm going to boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses and my struggles and my difficulties, my persecutions, all the things that nobody wants to share about, because we always want to show people our best Instagram face, our Facebook life. Everybody's always having a cocktail and talking about how their kids that are at Harvard. And you're like, man, my life sucks. It's like he started to share it. If you notice, when Paul would roll into town, what did he do? He started talking, man, I'm the worst of sinners. And you know what? I know I am. Shoot, I guarantee you, nobody listening to me has done things I've done. Promise you. Hey, hit me up. You know, that's how Paul felt. And he talked about his worst things, man. I blasphemed. I was a violent man. I persecuted the church. I was responsible for killing people. I mean, he led with his weaknesses, and God's power came on him. He even preached with fear and trembling. Man, I see that. And that is what not set me free, continues to set me free. Why in the world am I telling you about child abuse and addiction and mental illness and divorce and remarriage? Didn't tell you about that one. God gave me an angel, and you talk about ride or die, man. I don't know what I would do, where I would be, you know, without my little Terry. But anyway, you'll get a chance to meet her. Then you'll like me even more. So, anyway, my thorn, I made peace with my thorn, and I began to love my shadows. Now, this is too much to just drop on you right now. We're going to have to develop this point, but you think about your shadows, your dark spots, the things that you have shame around, the things that are your weaknesses, the things that you say, if you took this away, I could really, really be better. Those are the places that need love. And if we don't love all the parts of us, especially the ugly parts, those parts will become pathological. Have you ever seen that? A preacher railing away at a certain lifestyle, and then you find out later that he's living the same lifestyle. It's like those dark spots will become pathological, and if you don't let them out, and this isn't a confess your sin or you're not forgiven thing. No, it's about, man, you've got to learn to let these things out and to love the parts of yourself that are hated. God says, Jesus said, a house divided will not stand. Well, a man divided will not stand either. If I love certain parts and hate certain parts, and I feel like I'm cursed because of this and that, It's like, nah, God made me the way he made me. And if I learn to make peace with that, then the thorn becomes my advantage and it becomes my gift. I can tell you the truth with all my heart. I would not trade my brain and I would not trade my nature. And even though it's been hard and I wish I hadn't hurt people, I would not change my past. I don't regret the past and I don't wish to shut the door on it. And I want to give you that. A couple of things and I'm going to close. There was an old man. He lived in a village and he was poor. His wife had passed. He's a widower and he's got a son who runs this little bitty broken down farm, but they survive. And the one valuable possession the old man has is just a prize stallion. And this little town, this little village, whenever the famine would come, all the people would come out and they would come to the man and say, sell us your horse, sell us your horse. And he wouldn't do it. He said, I'll never sell this horse. This horse is like family. And he would almost lose everything. And the people called him a fool because he wouldn't sell his prized possession, his thing of value so they could survive. He refused to do it. A few weeks after that, a storm came and the horse broke out of the stall, ran away. And word got to the people and they came out and started talking, you fool, you should have sold the horse. And that was the only thing you had. Now you're certainly gonna starve because you got nothing. And he said, we don't know if this is a curse or a blessing. We just know that my horse ran away. And they're like, whatever, you're cursed and you're a fool, old man. And they went away. You know how people like to talk at our misfortune. I know that. And so a couple weeks after that, the horse came back. And he brought 12 more. So now there's a pack of stallions and his son goes out and he gets them all into the corral and into the stall and closes it up. And just like that, he becomes the richest man in town. Poor little village. And now all of a sudden he's the man. He's got all these prize horses and the people here and they come out and they start talking. They're like, oh my gosh, old man, we had no idea that wasn't a curse. It was a blessing. If your horse hadn't run away, you wouldn't have gotten all this treasure. And the man shook his head and said, we don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. We just know that my horse returned and brought 12 more. And they're like, whatever, man, you're the luckiest man in the world. And they went away. Well, the son started breaking the horses. Jump on it, throw them off. Jump on it, throw them off. Once he got thrown off real high and boom, fell down and broke his leg. And now all of a sudden he couldn't work the farm. And the farm had more to be done than ever before. Word got to the village and the people came out and they're like, oh my gosh, it was a curse. If you hadn't gotten all those horses, then your son wouldn't have broke his leg. Now he's laid up in the bed and you're going to lose everything. What do you got to say for yourself? And the old man shook his head and said, we don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. We just know that my son has a broken leg. And they said, whatever, man, you are cursed. You're an unlucky man. And so they went away. Well, not long after that, a war broke out in the neighboring countryside, and all the young men of the village were sent off to fight and die in the battle. But his son couldn't go because he had a broken leg. All the people came out and they said, oh my gosh, it wasn't a curse. It's a blessing. If your son hadn't have broke his leg, he'd be off at war dying with our sons. But now he's safe at home. What do you have to say for yourself now? And the old man looked at him and said, when will you ever learn? We don't know if this is a blessing or a curse. We just know that my son is in his bed. You see one line of the poem and think you understand the whole thing. You hear one line of the song and think you understand the composer. You read one page of the book and think you understand the author. We don't know if these are blessings or curses. We just know that life has shown up. Moral of the story, I look back and I thought things were curses, they were blessings. I thought things were blessings, they were curses. How are we gonna know? We just gotta live life and continue to trust that God has given us all that we need for life and godliness. And so I'll close with this. You tell me the things that have been the hardest times in my life, a curse or a blessing. I can tell you this, my son, and we're doing a podcast together on this, so I'm not speaking out of class. My son's 28, and he's like me. A lot of times this thing is genetic as far as the mental illness aspect, the bipolar disorder. And I've been diagnosed and on this journey for over 20 years. He's 28, and now all of a sudden it has visited him. But I can walk with him, and I can talk with him, and I can show him what's ahead. When he's on the mountaintop, I can keep him down, and when he's in the valley, I can lead him out of it. I've been there. Would I trade that? Is it a blessing or a curse? Well, it's a blessing, because if I didn't know, I'd be like the many parents out there that don't know how hard their kids are struggling. They don't see it. I do. And we have a relationship like I always dreamed of, but it ain't easy. My daughter, God bless her, we're going to be doing one too. She's 3 years sober. She's 24. Man, if I would have gotten it at 21, good Lord, but that wasn't my story. But I'm so proud of her. She's a recovery soldier. We go to 12-step meetings together. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I've been sober since 2005. 18 years I've been on this track ahead of her on this thing called recovery. And so now I can walk with her, and I'm so proud of her, and I can show her things, and she can teach me things. So my alcoholism, is it a blessing or a curse? Appears to be a blessing now. And then the marriage I have, good Lord, I'm gonna share a lot about that. I mean, I thought I was damaged goods, but now I've got the marriage of my dreams. So God is God. He's on his throne, and he ain't nervous. That is the intro to what we're going to do together. Believe this till I see you again. God made you perfectly the way he wants you. Storms come into life because it is life, and he chases us and will never let us go. And those who have wandered away, maybe you should just sit with them. Don't try to restore them or disciple them or counsel them or train them. Those that are struggling mentally or with addiction, sit with them. Love them. Because when I was out there, the phone stopped ringing and it was quiet. And I don't want anybody to experience that. I love you. Thank you, James. Get well, brother. And I'll see you Wednesday night virtually. And then in about a month or so, we're going to reset this weekend. And I'm going to bring my little crazy little wife, and we're going to have a blast. Love you. Thank you for sharing so much of this time. And thank you for just being a wonderful family. And thank you for embracing me, even though you haven't yet. I know you will. Love you guys, and I will see you soon. Peace.